we've ensured that Canada's first ever national housing strategy isn't also the last by requiring that every future federal government develop and maintain a national housing strategy that takes into account the key principle of housing as a human right. Today is a historic day for housing in Canada, because we're introducing amendments to the National Housing Strategy Act that will further entrench and protect the commitments we've already made. These amendments will ensure greater accountability, and they will give vulnerable Canadians a greater voice in housing decisions that affect them. The National Housing Strategy Act also calls for the creation of a federal housing advocate, supported by the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Thanks to today's amendments, we are enhancing the advocate's role in identifying and researching systemic housing challenges. The federal housing advocate will be able to consult with vulnerable Canadians, people with lived experience, experts, to better understand the impact of housing need and homelessness. The advocate will report to the minister responsible for housing on these issues. Its recommendations will be tabled here in Parliament, and the minister and the government will be required to respond. The National Housing Strategy Act will create a National Housing Council supported by CMHC, which will act as a focal point for housing policy discussions on the National Housing Strategy and will advise the minister on how to improve housing outcomes. With today's amendments, we're empowering the National Housing Council with even more freedom to support the federal housing advocate and to report on their findings to the minister responsible. Today's amendments detail how the minister and the government will be required to report back to the House and to Canadians on the recommendations they receive. Simply stating that housing is a human right means nothing unless there are robust accountability mechanisms, reporting mechanisms in place, and with these amendments, we are doing precisely that.